All right, welcome to the GTP. My name is Scott, and today our guest is Colleen. She is a professional fashion and beauty photographer and is host of Colleen's Manga Recommendations based in Chicago. Colleen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Colleen, in this episode, I'd love just talk about, what is it like getting into the photography, your manga channel. But before we do, I always think it might be important to ask just so people know a little bit more of our background. Would you mind sharing growing up, what was the perfect Saturday for you? Did you enjoy manga and anime at a younger age, or did it take, maybe you're a little older when you got into it?
I was into manga and anime as a kid, so probably my perfect Saturday was waking up to, the Saturday cartoons in the morning, watching Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, and then if it wasn't that, it was going to hang out with my friends and reading manga with them, or if they weren't available, reading it alone in my room. Perfect Saturday.
That is phenomenal. What manga were you reading at a young age?
Anything I could get my hands on, really. Whatever my library had available, and then if they didn't have things available, I would like search the library listing for all the manga that they had, and I was like, okay, that looks cool, that looks cool. I mean, I was reading like, One Piece and Bleach and Inuyasha, and then I was also reading Fruits Basket and or on High School Host Club, just all the quintessential like early 2000s.
Well, that's phenomenal. I never thought at a younger age to go to my local library to look for manga.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't either. It just so happened that I had a friend who introduced me to it. And then I was at my library one day and I saw they had a little rack of like manga and they happened to have like Fruits Basket and I had watched the anime. So I was like, "Oh, there's like a book for this?" So that's how I started getting into it.
Oh, that's hilarious. So, shifting over then, since we got the important stuff out of the way, what made you want to get into beauty and fashion photography?
I had a friend who was taking photos around like junior year of high school. And at the time, I was very into doing illustration. I thought I wanted to do manga and like make manga as a kid. But then my friend who was taking photos, I was looking at her pictures and I was like, I could do this. So I kind of started taking pictures and posting them. And then I really enjoyed it. And I just kept going and going and going. I think I had landed on beauty and fashion photography because I had this weird obsession with Zoe Deschanel for a really long time. And for some reason, like her like quirky aesthetic is what got me into doing like more interested in like fashion and stuff like that. So that's how I ended up with fashion photography.
That's phenomenal. My wife and I watch many of That's Jess and her quirky antics, so it's a
Yeah, I
great show.
love that show.
I know many people enjoy photography, and I talk to people all the time. They're like, "Oh, this is a hobby," or they're not sure. Hey, I actually want to make this a career, or they're never sure. Should I make that jump? What would you recommend sharing? What was that transition for you? Just doing this as a hobby to something like actually, I want to make this a professional career.
Yeah, I went to school for photography for 3 years. And then in between my second and third year of going to school for it, I did an internship. And that internship is really kind of what turned my I guess kind of hobby, like wanting to be a career into an actual career because that's where I kind of started getting more connections and the person I interned for, the photographer really helped me out. So I would just say like putting yourself out there and really trying to like get to know other photographers and like try to get internships. Like if you really want to make it into a career, just really try to make those connections in your community. And then from there, putting yourself out there by like emailing people. I had to email a lot of like modeling agencies to just get someone interested to work with me, and then you build those relationships.
And I'm assuming maybe one of them or two might have said no.
Oh yeah. either that or just absolute silence, and I don't hear anything back.
So I know a lot of our listeners that could be an issue just facing that rejection. How would you recommend just how did you handle putting yourself out there knowing that you might not get that response back?
Um, I mean, it is always like it is always hard to get rejection, but there are so many, not everywhere, but there are so many different modeling agencies. There's so many different like aspiring models who might want to work with you. So just like continuing to put yourself out there and just kind of know that not everyone's going to vibe with your particular brand of photography, but as long as you keep trying, like there will always be someone who will be interested.
And I think that's really encouraging for our listeners that it only takes one person to say yes and be able
Yeah.
to get your feet wet, to get your start, to be able to move forward.
Yeah, exactly.
So shifting into Colleen's manga recommendations, one thing I preach from you is how knowledgeable you are in shoujo manga. For our listeners who might not know, or maybe they have their own reality of what they think it is, would you share what is shoujo manga to you and why is it so important?
Shoujo manga is just by definition what it is manga that is made for young girls, usually around 8 to 24. Depending on the magazine, it can be for like a younger demographic, so like elementary, middle school girls, or it could be up to like kind of new adult 18 to 19 girls as well. So shoujo can really range from any sort of maturity. But to me, what I really think is special about it is how unique that specific, like targeting a demographic of young girls for nerdy media, nerdy culture. And I think that is pretty unique for nerd culture because I feel like, you don't really see something like that a lot in America where it, nerds getting something specifically for the women demographic. You usually just kind of have like stuff for men and then stuff for everyone. So I do think shoujo is pretty unique and cool in that aspect that we do have something that is meant for young girls.
And I think that's good perspective you just shared is there's a lot of times that men are just not aware. Like, what do you mean this isn't also meant for women? Or I've never experienced that. So I think that's very helpful. The little tangent, but I remember my wife sharing with me how when she parks her car, she always has to looks for the right lighting and I was holding her keys as she goes to the entrance. I'm like, why would you do that? I've
Yeah.
never entered my mind.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we're always having to think of our doom just doing basic tasks.
So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. And I'll be honest, I didn't know that much about shoujo manga until I stumbled across your video. You had the decline of shoujo anime. Would you mind just sharing a little bit? I thought it was so powerful. Is not only was it so helpful and you went into depth, but I believe it went viral. Uh,
Yes.
did you expect that? And what do you make of that?
I absolutely did not expect it, first of all. That was what my second video, like official video that I put out on my YouTube. It was crazy. I was not expecting that at all. But I do think it does kind of speak to the fact that it is pretty noticeable that shoujo anime like just isn't made how we used to have it. And the fact that it was resonating with so many people and like really getting people to be like, oh wait, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, where did that go? So on the one hand, it was really cool, and then on the other hand, sudden viral fame for your second video, it can be a little tough.
What? So I know many people are wanting to go viral.
Yeah.
What was good of that, and what were some things that you may learn of or people may not be aware of, or let's say landmines? Just assuming all of our listeners one day will go viral, what might they want to know?
I would say the first thing that's really great about it is just like obviously getting your name out there, getting your content out there, having people relating to it, having people excited about it. That's all great. That's like what you want. And then you always have that side of people just wanting to put you down and not happy that you're talking about something they don't care about, stuff like that. Um, Getting comments you're not used to having to get in the hundreds, in the thousands sometimes.
Mm,
So you do always have that aspect of it too. And then you have to start worrying about, okay, well, are people gonna remember my face? Like, I have what 300,000 something views on that video now. Like, are these 300,000 people gonna recognize me if I walk into a Barnes and Noble? Like, it can get kind of nerve wracking. So I don't know if I have like specific advice for people on that, but just like I guess continue to do what you're doing and it'll it'll pass.
yes, it's just a moment.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing though? I think a lot of the times we get negative feedback. How would you? It's one thing. It's hard just to have a few things that negative. Like I don't know if you ever heard the phrase like you could hear 10 positive things, but one negative thing can just knock you down.
Yeah.
How do you handle when you get multiple negative feedback over and over? What were you able to do just to keep yourself healthy?
Um Man, it is really hard because I'll be honest, lately it's been getting to me a lot more. I think at first it wasn't just because I wasn't like a known YouTuber or anything. So I felt like I could speak my mind a little bit more easily and like reply to people. But now with the fact that I've grown a lot more, I keep wondering, okay, well, are people going to um, be like, oh, you can't talk back as much anymore because you have a bigger audience, so people are probably expecting you to be calm and like not respond to comments because oh, you have so many people. Why are you just responding to this one person? So I do think I feel like I have to hold it in a little bit more and not talk back to people. So what I've been doing more so lately is just I have a close group of friends that I've been talking with, and I'll send some stuff like comments I see that are just annoying and I can't really say anything back to it. So I'll just send it to them and then we'll all just kind of be like, ah, this is so stupid. And that's very cathartic to just have a group of people who are kind of like-minded and they agree with you and you can just get it out that way and not have to not have to do it publicly.
Well, I think a key you're sharing, Colleen, is and you correct me if I'm wrong, is at least having a group of friends or having someone that you can vent or you can share with. Just don't hold it all in alone.
Yeah, and especially people who kind of understand as well. And I know not everyone is going to have people who understand that kind of stuff, but like, you're in the community long enough, you're going to end up with like maybe one or two people who you trust and one or two people that you like go to when you're getting frustrated or just need someone to talk to. You're gonna end up with a couple people like that if you're in the community for long enough. And I've made a lot of good friendships, not just through YouTube, but on TikTok as well, which is where I started. And that's how I made a lot of my friends before I started YouTube. So having that community before getting into a new space has been really helpful as well.
And they are a mighty strong advocate community that has your back.
Yes.
Uh, uh, so I might butcher this, and I apologize, but my wife says if you can't say this incorrectly, you're in trouble. Um, so I apologize. But one video I thought was really powerful was on I want to say misogyny.
Yeah.
Okay, I said it right. She practiced with me in the manga community, and I just want to get this out of the way. We're not generalizing, but discussing that there are men like this. So I just want to get that out of the way first. And it actually, what I appreciate about your video, it actually allowed me to have brought up some deep conversations with my wife on misogyny. And I wanted to hear, I was trying to seek to understand, well, help me understand your perspective, because I may not see that myself. So on her lens, one thing she pointed out was, I thought it was powerful that she said, why can't men just uh, enjoy or compliment a genre for what it is without being backhanded? I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you'll hear say, oh, it's pretty good for a girls' movie." Or and she was just saying it's very demeaning towards women. I was just curious, what are your thoughts on that type of stuff?
Yeah. I think generally when you're talking about something you really like, so say I'm talking about a series, I'll just say Fruits Basket just because it's, pretty much like the shoujo now. So if I'm like, say, talking about Fruits Basket and some guy I'm talking to, it's like, oh yeah, I really loved Fruits Basket. It's pretty good for a shoujo. Or, oh, I really liked Fruits Basket. It's not like other shoujos, it's kind of that same feeling you get if some guy is talking to you and he's like, oh, you're so different from other girls, you're not like the other girls, you're special. It's just kind of that backhanded compliment of like, oh, I respect this one but I don't respect the rest of them.
Hmm.
And it can also just be, it can derail a conversation as well. So, like, say I do really want to talk about Fruits Basket, but now I'm stuck in this conversation of, oh, well, what do you mean it's not like other shoujo? What's so wrong with other shoujo? And then, I have to like start talking about, well, shoujo is pretty good. And then it just, derails the conversation and you're just on a completely other, and you just wanted to talk about Fruits Basket.
Right. Yeah, because I don't think I've ever heard a guy say it's pretty good for a shonen manga.
Exactly.
Like, well, what do you mean? And then you're on the defensive. I appreciate you sharing that clarity. Why do you think some men make it difficult for a female to join a genre? Why can't they enjoy it for simply just for the enjoyment?
I think it does have a lot to do with, toxic masculinity. You feel like anything feminine is going to be making you less of like a manly man. And so if you enjoy this thing and you enjoy it despite being feminine, or if you enjoy feminine things, it's just the idea that like liking them is going to make you less than as a man.
And it makes me think what you're bringing up is like, oh, guys only can enjoy this, girls should only enjoy this, and there might be something wrong if you were to want to cross over. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
so I get that. I really enjoy romantic comedies. And before I met my wife, she's like, "Oh, you own Mean Girls." I'm like, "Yes, I do." And then
Great movie.
which is, I guess, not a romantic comedy, but I that hopeless romantic side, you're like, "Oh, if you could, find this perfect girl that's like this," or
Yeah.
but I really appreciate that point, because there is that where you're thought differently, which will make each person be more on that defensive, or make think like, I only can stay in this lane if I want to be accepted by others.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, with that, uh, I thought something that was really powerful, I thought you shared in that video, was that, most of the time you have men deciding what should be produced. Why is it that men get to decide what's produced when their opinion is not the only one that matters?
Um, Once again, I think it's like a really deep rooted issue in our society. Just how sexism will, it just kind of seep into every aspect of our society. So like they, you know, don't really have women in places of power because that's kind of hard question to, it is kind of a hard question to answer because like as just one person I feel like I would have to go into sexism in corporate culture, sexism in the workplace, why the glass ceiling for women where you can only hit so high. And then when they are put in certain places, they're often put in those places to take the fall for a company. There's a word for it. It's like the glass cliff or something like that. I can't
No, there
remember the
is a
word.
glass ceiling, and there's a gender inequality.
Yeah.
That
So
you're absolutely
just,
right. It's there.
yeah. So just all those things. I feel like it's just I'm only one person. So it's kind of hard for me to like get into all the reasons why men have these places of power, even if the things that they're in power of is for women.
Well, as one person, but I believe you have a voice, and it is being heard and helping at least bring awareness.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm in business, and I've learned about this stuff, the inequality, and how the pay range is different, or even simple things of like, so on an HR side, a lot of people don't know is that you actually, when they're going to hire someone, there's actually a range of what they can give. It's very often that men will ask for a higher amount of money. It's not very often that, and they know this, that women won't. So they know, oh, we can get this person cheaper. So one of my friends who's an HR professional, what she does is she actually offers the higher to a woman just in the first place, just because she's seen over and over through patterns that their pay will be less.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. It's just like all that stuff that like people will bring it up and other guys will just, you know, brush it off. Oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's nothing like that. But I mean, like you said, it's just you don't see it if you're not looking for it, and you don't see it if you're not talking to people who are experiencing it. So it's there. There's research about that.
Right. And then our listeners can more than happy do research on their own. That you are right. If you're not looking for it, you don't realize it. It's the same when I talk to my friends who are people of color, that they're like, you don't realize racism exists unless until it's happening to you.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
so what? So maybe this is a better question then, Colleen, is uh, what question should I be asking, or how could I find? What would you recommend for someone who, let's say, they're authentically curious about, they're like, I even if they say, hey, I disagree with you, but I hear you that you're saying that there's this culture. What could they do to maybe seek to understand, to see that maybe there's even just a grain of truth to what you're saying?
Probably to probably to listen to the women in their lives, talk to them, ask them the questions. I know I'm not the only one talking about stuff like this. There's got to be other people that they know, other women that they know who would happily talk about their experiences with sexism just in their life and in whatever work culture they're in. I mean, there's YouTube video essays on this. I've found so many over the years. I probably can't think of any off the top of my head, but so many YouTube videos on this. You could really just type in like women pay gap, and there will probably be like tens of hundreds of videos just talking about like all the research behind it and stuff like that. So I would definitely just say like talking to people that you know and doing a little bit of research on your own, just looking it up, and maybe not just like because a lot of people like to be in their echo chamber of like-minded individuals, which is fine sometimes, but if you're trying to hear something from the other side, then go to the other side. Don't just don't just listen to one certain group of people that obviously wouldn't have the same opinion.
I Yes, I think that's very, very wise. Not to get into politics, but I have a friend who's in a certain area, and he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Everyone's voting the same where I am." And
Yeah.
it's like, "Well, it's because you live in this very rural town, and everyone you know thinks very like-minded.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised there actually is other parts of the country that may see things differently."
With a little bit more people in those
Yes.
in those areas as well.
Well, how do you think we can help get women then into positions where they are representing that demographic?
I would just say talking about this kind of stuff and bringing it up and being like, hey, anyone else notice this is a really good first step. And then from there, I just think it's just kind of pressuring companies to be like, think about this. Maybe take into account the fact that you're leaving out a big um, voice from an audience that is consuming your media. I mean, Shonen Jump just hired their first female editor in 54 years. So clearly, clearly they are starting to move with the times and seeing that Shonen Jump is very popular with women as well, and maybe they do need women in their offices and giving a voice to this audience that is consuming Shonen Jump, and just kind of like pressuring companies to be like, hey, we really like this woman that you just put in charge. Wouldn't it be cool if you added more? So I just think like supporting the people who are in these positions, the women that are in these positions, and just kind of continuing to pressure companies to continue to hire.
I think that's a great first step is,
Yeah.
be aware, how many are in the company? Is there a gap? And help them be aware of, hey, we would like to see more of this. This will also help you as well.
And it is really hard to know these things because we are, in a community of people who are consuming media from a different country, and not all of us can speak that language. So, like, if they have articles about this and we're not able to read Japanese, then we're not going to be able to, know about it. So that is another really hard thing. So we could always just we have companies here who are also involved with them. So just kind of talking to those companies, kind of pressuring them a little bit. Hey, you're not listening to your audience of women. You're not listening to your audience of queer people. You're not listening to your audience of Black people. So I just think you kind of just have to like a little home, a little bit of home pressuring first, and then maybe it can, go from there.
And it could be because I do for the most part always try to assume positive intent. They may not even realize that that an audience doesn't feel heard.
Yeah.
So just being able to voice saying, I'm not feeling heard here. Here's how I'm seeing this.
Yeah.
Because if they genuinely do care about their readers, which I think most of them do, is they would want to take into account where could I maybe missing it, or how can I help make sure that I am giving a voice to everyone who is consuming our content.
Yeah.
With that, I would like to believe that most men are not purposely being misogynistic, uh, but that does not mean that we don't say things that are misogynistic without realizing. What are some common things you see men say or do with that's misogynistic, or let's bring up mansplaining, without realizing it? And maybe you can even explain what mansplaining is for a few of those who may not be aware.
Yeah. Mansplaining is basically just when, if you are anyone who does not identify as, like a cis man, If you say something, or if you're having a conversation with a guy and you say, "Oh, I really like playing guitar," and they just go into a full-on explanation of how you play guitar and telling you how to play guitar, but like you've been playing guitar for 5 years and you don't really need someone to explain it to you. That's basically what mansplaining is. I would say what I see a lot is people being like, "Oh, you know nothing about the manga industry because you said one thing that isn't technically right, but I just interpreted it in the way that I think is not right." Or like, "Oh, you said an offhanded compliment or an offhanded comment, and now that I don't agree with that offhanded comment, I'm just gonna disagree with everything you say now." There's just a lot of things, and I feel like it's just people going in and wanting to disagree with you, and then they find a reason to disagree with you, and so then they have their reason, and now they can just be like, "I see what you look like, and now I don't have to disagree. Now I don't have to agree with everything that you're saying."
They're essentially justifying their actions.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say the most mansplaining I really get is just people being like, "Oh, well, you clearly don't understand how this works. So let me go into a full-on 3-page paragraph, 3-page YouTube comment about how you're wrong, actually." And it's just kind of like, "Oh, well, a lot of the stuff that you said, I actually said in my video." But honestly, I would attribute that to people just not watching full videos. Their attention span is like up to the 30-second mark.
No, I mean, we have the analytics, so we can see when
Yeah.
when they stop watching.
Yeah, a lot of the videos that I get like full essays in my YouTube comments, I'm looking at my analytics and it's like 40 seconds in, they stop watching. And it's like, "Oh, okay, so I know where all these comments are coming from."
Oh, so as a male, myself, what can I do to be part of the solution?
Really just talking to people that you see. I know that not everyone's like super comfortable with like speaking out on things like that. And I'm never going to be like, you have to speak out on it, because it can be nerve wracking and you don't always want to get in internet fights, you know? But I think if anyone like really wants to put in any effort or help out in any way, just kind of like calling out something if you see it. If someone's like, "Oh, all shoujo is trash and anyone who likes it is not a real fan," and anything like that, just like being like, "Hey, why are you saying that? What on what basis?" I think is a good start. And then even if like you don't want to say anything online, if you see it, if you're seeing it in your friend circle, or you're just seeing like you're hearing a friend say, "Oh, I don't read shoujo at all because it's all just girly romance," and then you can be like, "Well, actually, it's not just romance, and there's other things too. But also, what's kind of wrong with romance?" It's just kind of like having these personal conversations or conversations with people who you see. And I think that's always going to be the first good step in that, is just being the one to call it out if you see it.
I think that's great. Is there anything you'd like to let our listeners know before we wrap up today?
Read shoujo. Shoujo's great.
In case they don't check out your video, do you mind just sharing a couple that you recommend for someone who may think it's only romance? What are a couple that you could potentially start with?
Yeah, my "What is Shoujo" manga video is always a good place to start, just kind of getting into a little bit of the history, and then what it is and what makes it so special. That's a really great video to start with for anyone who doesn't really know what it is and wants to find out.
And I'll put links down below for that video.
Okay.
If people are interested in following you, where can they find you these days?
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Colleen's Manga Recs, and then on Twitter at manga_nostalgic.
Wonderful. And we'll put links down that below as well. Colleen, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you giving of your time and being able to have this discussion with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Not a problem. You have a wonderful day.
You too.